Thought I'd talk about the speaker brackets that I bought from maybe Amazon or eBay, I can't remember now. These are supposedly for an Audi Q3, but in fact, and I'll show a couple of pictures in a moment and talk about the door configuration. For the front door, these are too small. The dimensions here are not large enough to bridge the gap for the hole, which is not very good. And on the rear door, this plastic here is too large. So actually, what I did was I bought on eBay some speakers for. This is a front speaker, and you can see I've hacked it apart here using a grinder. So what I did was really just use the carcass here. It's like, I don't know, 10, 12 quid for one of those. So I bought a set of 4 cheap, and what I did was I ground off the bottom part here, which contains the lugs. It actually sits in this orientation. This is the top on the door like that, and use this as a guide to grind or cut away this. And then I used solvent weld, Osma solvent weld. I have some. Yeah, I use this Osma. This is the degreasant. It livens the plastic up, ready for the application of the cement, solvent cement. It's basically like Airfix glue, but it's pretty pokey stuff, and it's phenomenally strong. Now this is ABS plastic, so it works very well with this kind of glue. So yeah, so that's quite nice now. So that is now a bracket that's been made and will sit perfectly on the door frame for the rears. So that will have my 6.5-inch speaker in it very nicely. The front, this is a bigger speaker here for the front. Yeah, the gap, as I said before, is too large. So that is actually here. The lower ring here is the ring that I cut off the bottom of this, and I've been able to use the solvent weld to glue this bracket, 6.5-inch bracket that I got. It's a little bit of cutting out required there, clamping down. But I mean, that'll set hard overnight. It'll be phenomenally strong. So I haven't quite finished with these. So I've got another one to do here when the other speaker arrives to cut up. And I'm also going to, there are some little raised bits here. I'm going to grind those down. I'm going to make a plywood ring inside there, and then use that polyurethane bonding to bond a block under there, so that I can drill more holes in this and then screw, rather than just into this little bit of plastic here. We'll then screw into a bunch of solid plywood underneath, and that will make, I think, very good mounts for mounting into the door. Another thing that I was a little bit worried about was when I show you the picture of the car door, you'll see there's a lug, which I was just a little bit worried about. So what I did was I made a mock-up of the internals of the speaker, and particularly the geometry of the magnet, and how far that magnet would protrude from the back. And then I was able to then put that up to the door and then look through these holes and actually use a little bore scope, a little camera on a stick, to just check the position of this magnet with respect to the lugs. But anyway, so that's what I did in order to double check it. So, you'll be sure that when I do this, that they'll fit properly in the car. So if you were to, follow what I'm doing, then you can be reasonably confident that the upgrade will work. So I think that the actual mounting in the doors will be fine. I think the other thing I'm a bit worried about at the moment is the location of the crossover that you could be putting in the car in the front. I know there's a space for that in the back. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to put that. I'm sure I'll be able to find somewhere. I don't want to put it inside the door, actually inside the door framework, although there's plenty of space for it there. I'd like to put it in between the door card and the door. So yeah, I'll get to that eventually. Whilst thinking about the speaker mounts and customization that's required there, I thought I might just mention where I am with respect to the amplifier. So I'm playing around with the amplifier at the moment. I'll come back to this on the screen at the moment, but there's the software setup. This is how I've got it set up in the room here. So it's getting power, and actually where it's getting power from is just from this little, it's a battery charger and it's running in 12-volt supply mode, and that's coming through this meter here, which means I can see that the amp's pulling 1.347 amps at the moment in a dormant mode. There it doesn't really take very much power. So anyway, that's how I'm keeping track of that, and I've got up to 10 amps to play with in this fuse. This is a 10 amp fuse in here as well, and then there's a 100 amp fuse in here. This wire that would normally be to the battery, that goes up here, and then obviously the earth here is tied away so there can't be any short circuits. It requires a remote, a REM. So this is just using a little switch here, so I can switch it on for the first time, and then once it's actually switched on in the software, you can configure it so that it will pick up a signal from input 1, which is one of the two here is input 1, and that is attached to a sound card here, little Zonar Essence sound card, Asus card. So that's where the outputs are coming from there, and obviously that's being fed from the computer there, so I've got that in the software. But interestingly, what I can also do, or what I've also done here, is I've attached the pre-amplifier outputs are going back into the sound card here, which means that I can now, you know, look at the effect of the graphic equalizer on pink noise and the like, which I can send through from various pieces of software, for example REW or true RTA software, both of which I've got running on this computer. So yeah, my plan is to, and I have already started it, but I shall show you in a minute, configuring this in terms of the crossovers for the various different speaker systems that will be attached to it. I'm then going to build small panels to put the speakers into and mount them in this room with the subwoofer behind this chair here, probably sitting on here, as if more or less with the same distances that they would be if they were in the car in this room. And that means I can play around with decide on what crossover setting I'm going to go for on the passive crossover units, and then put a few EQ curves in place, flat EQ response, and then also I think an EQ curve that's based on the Fletcher-Munson curve as well, or something like that. I may do a little video on that later. Anyway, I'll turn to the software screen and just show you the configuration on the software. So because I can take the stereo input and then output that back to the computer, I can use, for example, REW, Room EQ Wizard. So yeah, there's a lot of files there. I don't propose to go into that in any detail, but just to show that by configuring the amplifier in this way, I can then measure it. And moving on to the tuning, think about which particular crossover settings I would be interested in. So these are the crossover settings I've set at the moment. This is before I've even listened to anything, but this is how I'm starting out. On the main speakers in the doors, starting at 150 Hertz up to 20 kilohertz. The center speaker, I'm going to have that running from 500 Hertz to 4 kilohertz, and that's because I measured it, and I think that's the range that it's probably operating in reasonably well. And the subwoofer, again, I measured that using the REW software, and I'm mapping that from 35 Hertz up to 150 Hertz, and that's how the subwoofer is configured. So again, because it's in bridge configuration, actually I've knocked down the sound level a little bit to make it a little bit more equal with the other speakers. And what else might there be? Delays, yes. So measuring the position of the speakers in the car allows me to think about what delays there will be for the speakers. So the speaker that's closest to my ear is the rear right speaker. It's only 41 centimeters from my ear. The subwoofer is actually the furthest away, so that is the one which has been set as a 0 delay. And other speakers, based upon the actual distance that I've specified, there's a calculated delay structure in there. The software, it looks to me like, when I look at this graph here, that we've got frequency along this axis going from 10 hertz up to, you know, to sort of 20 kilohertz. And if we look at the different speakers here, you can see that depending upon what the frequency is, there appears to be a different level of delay. So this is 45 milliseconds, 0 milliseconds. It looks that at certain frequencies there's more delay than at other frequencies. So here we have at around 100 hertz we have only 10 milliseconds delay for various speakers. The subwoofer here is delayed 40 just less than 40 hertz. It's about 40 milliseconds delay. So it looks to me, and if that's the subwoofer trace, which it is here, you see this teal colour there, that actual delay is frequency dependent. So the subwoofer at 100 hertz, it's actually delayed only about 10 milliseconds. So it does appear to me, and I don't know for sure that this is how it works, but if I interpret that graph correctly, basically it's calculating the delay as a function of the frequency that's being played from the speaker. And that looks tremendously clever to me. Now maybe somebody will point out that that's an incorrect assessment of the graph, but that's the way it looks to me. Yeah, so once we've set the crossover, once we've set the delays, and I'm going to be using test tones in the car on those further to optimize that, then it'll be a matter of modifying the EQ, which we can do here for these various different EQ settings. Yeah, so nice piece of software. Regarding the mappings, I have a file here where I've looked at the plug that comes out of the back of the head unit. So there's an 8-pin plug here and there's a 4-pin plug here. This contains the subwoofer and the center speaker. These are the front, rear, right, left speakers. Map that out here, what the colours are for the wires, what the thickness of the wire is. The subwoofer's 2.5 millimeters, the center speaker's only 0.75 millimeters. The front, rear, the front right and front left speakers are 1.5 millimeter wire. That's okay. The rear speakers are actually 1 millimeter wire, which means actually I'm not going to be able to bring the speaker wires back to this head unit to tap into that. I'm going to have to tap into the B pillar to bring basically a 1.5, 1.6 millimeter wire to the B pillar, just to make sure that that's not starved of current. Going further, I've an 8-core wire, which I will use 6 of the cores to bring the signals from the head unit, so the sub, the center, the rear right, front left, rear left speakers. That's how they're going to be mapped with the colors on the wires, and then those colors here are mapped here to the input assignments, so input 1 through 6. It's been reordered here, and you can see that the colors have changed. So for example, front left is white and orange, front left is white and orange here. It's going to be negative for white, positive for orange. So you can see how that maps down there anyway. And then the outputs, the speaker outputs, A, B, C, D, E, will be the door speakers, and then the center speaker on E, and the sub will be in bridge mode. Yeah, so anyway, actually, if you're doing this to the same car as I am, maybe it'll be useful to have this file, so I'll create a PDF of this and put a link in at the bottom of the video for it. Thinking of the doors, so yeah, this is the speaker in the rear door, and you can see here this lip that would stop the those aftermarket speaker brackets working, and you can see that's why I had to cut out a lot of plastic there in order to be able to make that fit properly. But that'll be a lot better now. The front speaker here, you can see that bracket doesn't really fit at all properly there. You can see it's coming away from the mounting points because it's too small. That's the reason why I had to expand it. This here is measuring the depth from the edge of that speaker to the this bracket at the back that's part of the window mechanism. That's, I don't know, 8.5 centimeters. The speakers are only 6.5 centimeters deep from that point, so there's plenty of space. And then this lug here was what I was worried about, but as I mentioned previously, that's missed very, very well. That when you actually look at where the magnet is, it's sitting here, so that misses that. So there's plenty of space to play with there. That should fit without any trouble at all. Let me think. Anything else about the software? Yeah, setting the inputs, you can trigger that with the remote, so that would be the 12-volt wire going in, or a signal. If you click on this, then it reads any voltage that's above a certain threshold on channel 1, so a speaker level input would also wake the unit up. I'm going to have both of these wired in, so when the ignition key switched on, or also when it's playing music, because sometimes you can turn the ignition off and you can actually have the radio playing for a while, so having both of those is useful. I think there's a lot of fun and games to be had with this software later. I think I'll come back to this in a more cogent video later when I've done some more work on it. But yeah, that's hopefully that's useful as it is.